Hello and welcome to episode 278 of the Random Nintendo Podcast. I'm Jason.
I'm Angel.
I am Kevin.
And this episode's title, we might actually owe an apology for this one, because normally we pick the title when we prep the episode and we, see what topics we have. But 2 weeks ago, literally the day we recorded our last episode, we thought of the funny pun for this one, which the title is Curb Your Enthusiasm. And the idea was, we have impressions of Kirby in the Forgotten Land, which Angel and I have some differing opinions on, I suspect, so that could fit for that. But then somehow the curbing of enthusiasm seemed to dictate the actual news cycle. Like, all the positivity of Kirby's release was followed up with Zelda being delayed, and then E3 getting canceled for this year. And it's just like multiple bummers that I swear we're not responsible for, but maybe we also kind of are. So, apologies that we sort of sent that into the universe, but either way, it's now what we're talking about this episode. Timestamps for all of which are on RoundTown.com, along with another topic we have in store. Angel has a mystery game he wanted to share impressions of that he refused to tell us before.
Yeah, even just bringing it up now, it's already going to disappoint everybody, so you probably just shouldn't have said anything.
So why, Angel? Why is there so much, mystique here?
No, you're adding the mystique. I just wanted to say, hey, it's going to bring this game up, and you're like, cool. And that would have been it. Also, stay tuned for Random Nintendo for some impressions on Curb Your Enthusiasm. So yeah,
assuming we have Random Nintendo anytime in the near future.
We'll get to it at some point.
Just the next time we have them. It doesn't have to be the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay tuned an indefinite amount of time. Yes. We're taking the...
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
The approach...
Yeah.
We're taking the approach, that Curb Your Enthusiasm takes. It comes out when it comes out. Like, he doesn't have a set schedule for his seasons. He just does it when he wants. Yeah, okay, fine. So if your game's not that exciting, let's just start off with what we're playing. Let's start.
Yeah, it really isn't, and that's kind of the central conversation around the game. But,
all right. Well, before we get to that, let's leave the suspense and make it more hyped up than it is. Let's start with Kirby because that is the namesake. If that's cool with you.
Yeah,
I feel like in what?
Yeah,
you'll allow it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. But I was gonna say, I feel like in the case of Kirby, I haven't been playing it as much as I've been, I know it sounds cheesy, but really, experiencing it. It's all over my life. It's taken over life. It's strange, beyond just a video game. Because, he's standing guard at Targets in the form of those, slip covers over their big red balls they put in front of the store. He won a Grammy last weekend. And most importantly, I met him, 5 of him, at Universal City Walk the other week. Which, by the way, you guys were invited to, and you also could have met 5 Kirbys. We could have each had 1.67 Kirbys of our own. But you didn't go.
Unless there's 10 of them, I'm not interested. After playing Kirby Mass Attack, I want to meet the whole Kirby.
You need bulk shipments of Kirbys.
So 7 isn't enough. No.
I mean, the event was kind of cool though.
Is Kirby his own unique person? Is he a race?
He is supposed to be a single entity.
Yeah, Kirby is that's his. Well, its name. Yeah, I guess they call them Little Star Warriors. It's implied that Meta Knight is a whatever Kirby is.
And if you take off Meta Knight's mask, he's kind of just a dark blue Kirby.
Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha. So, that confused me when you said I met 5 of him.
Well, there were multiple. That's the thing. So this event, it was it's a Kirby event, but they had all these repeating Kirby. So basically, what they did is they made this walkthrough photo experience. They called it a 3D walkthrough where they had all these life-size statues, or maybe larger than life. I think Kirby's smaller than they made him, but life-size statues of Kirby.
It's supposed to be 2 inches tall or something.
Yeah, and these are 2 feet, so I guess it's not really life-size. Larger than life, bigger than you can imagine.
Right.
Statues of Kirby in various power-up states. So there was a full-size car Kirby, which was just everything you'd want it to be, except you can't actually drive it. And there are also statues of Hammer Kirby and Sword Kirby and Cutter Kirby, and they had this jailed Waddle Dee and a statue of his new of Kirby's new sidekick from the game, I don't remember the name, Elfilin or something like that. Wow. And you could go station to station. I mean, let's be honest. When we get to Impressions of Forgotten Land, Elfilin so far about half of your game. There's
the thing because Forgotten Land, you're very forgetful characters, very forgetful.
Well, Elfilin doesn't do anything. She has side comments on the world map, or when you're in town, she'll be hey. She's not Navi because she doesn't shout hey at you, but she's just wouldn't it be cool to try a different power up? And it's okay, thank you, Elfilin. But they had a statue that you could pose with, and the idea was you just went station to station and posed. So Elflin, ironically, being the most interesting photo I think I ended up getting, because my girlfriend insisted, like, the way the statue's set up, I, like, went behind it and did, like, a cheer squad photo almost, so there's now a photo of me, like, crouching in such a way that looks like I'm in, like, a cheerleader pyramid with this character that's totally forgettable, so I'll show you guys the picture sometime. It's really something. But anyway, the whole thing was kind of, like, this cool little setup, and they even had this gate where you, like, walk in, and you're walking through Kirby's mouth, and it would blow air on you and make, like, the Kirby inhaling sound. And at the end, you got, like, you know, a little Kirby-branded swag bag with a lanyard and a code for some free in-game items and stuff. But what was really, like, noteworthy about it, or, like, kind of cool, was I think this marked the first physical Nintendo event outside of maybe stuff they do in their New York store, but the first, like, dedicated Nintendo event on its own, standing on its own, since the pandemic started. So it was interesting to see, you know, it's kind of interesting to see how they, like, adapted. There were no actual demo units of the game anywhere. They were just running videos on screens in the plaza. There was, you know, lots of social distancing, which actually kind of worked in the event's favor because it meant that you could actually, like, take your time with each statue, and they had, like, a rep at each statue that would explain the power to you, and then you had your ability to, you know, get as many pictures as you want without being crowded. But, really, it just felt nice to be, like, back at a physical Nintendo thing again. I mean, you guys know how much I like attending physical game stuff, and this one felt, I don't know, especially appropriate being the first one back, since it was also the location of the first Nintendo event I ever attended, the DS launch back in 2004, and then subsequently also the Wii launch in 2006, but that's not as poetically full circle, so I don't know why I mentioned the Wii. But yeah, it was just kind of nice to see Nintendo back in the world doing physical stuff. It also served as kind of a nice entry point into the game itself, minus Evelyn and how much I didn't care about her. But and it's fitting that I did this, you know, the majority of my game playing of Forgotten Land was after I went to that event. So it was like the perfect sort of like segue of my life into now this game, which is what I mostly have been playing. But Angel, you also checked out Forgotten Land a little in a much more normal way, much more normal entry point. You played the demo, right?
The demo.
So what did you think of it before I go too much into what I thought of it?
It played... I mean, I guess the great thing about, like, you know, these Nintendo platformers is that they just always feel really good. The way Kirby feels to move around, like, one of the things I was kind of, like, just worried going in was, like, oh, man, I hope, like, his run speed doesn't feel too slow. I hope when he jumps, he doesn't, like, slow down in the air as the way he does in Kirby Crystal Shards. Like, there's all these little things where, you know, 3D movement for Kirby specifically can go wrong. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see that it was just really great all around. Like, his airspeed was great. Like, he just felt good to run around and control. Everything else about the game, though, was pretty much, like, exactly what I thought it was going to be. Which, you know, is both necessarily not a good or a bad thing. It's just, I had very middle of the road, like, and, what's the word I'm looking for? Expectations? I guess you could say that. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be like, you know, it'd be silly of me to expect like, oh yeah, this is going to be like Donkey Kong Country or something, you know, just like, it's not going to be a difficult game. It's not going to be ridiculously easy. You know, it's just going to be fun. And it was just fun to move around that game. I mean, I think I played to like 2 or 3 levels. I don't remember how many levels were in the demo. But, you know, it was a fun short time, but it pretty much felt, honestly, like, the more I played through the game, the more I start to feel like I've played this game already. Maybe because I just played so many Kirby games in the past that it I don't know. Something, like, switched in my head where I'm just like, I think I'm gonna wait. Like, I was enjoying what I was seeing, but I just kept getting a sense of, like, I don't need to play this right now. Like, it felt like I've been there, done that. And without spoiling a lot to myself, like, you know, I kind of skipped around, like, a YouTube just, like, kind of listening to some of the soundtrack because, you know, some of the music sounds really great. And, yeah, just looking at some of the bosses or stuff like that, it's like, yeah, that looks kind of cool, but it doesn't look exciting either. Like, I don't know, some parts look cool that I'd really want to try out later, you know, mainly, like, the level up system and that kind of stuff. But when I do eventually play it, it's more than likely it's going to be 100% co-op, and I'll probably be the Bandana D. But, yeah. So, I mean, overall, I mean, yeah, I guess you could say, like, at the end, my impressions were good. It was just, like, maybe and I think I might have touched on this on the podcast before, but I think I'm just starting to be less and less excited for Kirby games specifically. Before, like, mainline Kirby games were like an instant buy, but yeah, like, I didn't even get Kirby Star Allies, I didn't get Kirby Planet Robobot, I didn't get Kirby Triple Deluxe, and I don't feel like I missed out on any of them. And I've seen plenty of gameplay from them, and yeah, I'm just kind of good. And even though this is a 3D Kirby game, like, even just playing it, I started just getting those same kind of vibes. So I'm sure that will change maybe once I eventually play the game, but yeah, I think I'm gonna keep chipping on the old backlog and eventually get to it instead of making it a day one purchase.
So there's the enthusiasm curbed, Kirb. But no, I think you're on to. I can see where you're coming from. Like, I think I was saying before, I'm a little over like halfway through the game, and I think the way I'd frame it, which kind of mirrors what you're saying to a degree, is that, it's an experience. It's a 2D 3D jump, but the experience is the fact that I went for a 2D 3D jump, but it did that transition very safely. Like, if you step back and kind of look at what they did here, it's been a minute since we've had Nintendo really take anything from 2D to 3D for the first time. We've seen them go the other way. Chibi Robo to Ziplash, Pikmin to Hey Pikmin. But the idea of sort of opening up a traditionally 2D experience into the third dimension is something I don't think we've seen Nintendo really do for like a decade now. Like, maybe Kid Icarus Uprising was the last one.
Well, I guess technically there was that Kirby game on 3DS where he could kind of move around in 360 degrees.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Blockbuster or whatever it was called. Yeah. But that one was a little different because it was, I mean, obviously it was isometric and it was scaled down, but also like they did this thing. And I was actually reading the developer interview with the Kirby team when it first was published on Tell.com a week or two ago. It's pretty interesting if you're curious about the transition. But they didn't know how to figure out how to make Kirby, like, he's round, right? He's just a ball. He has little arms, so he's basically a ball. So, like, how do you know which way he's facing? And that's been part of the struggle for them with making him transition to 3D is, like, Mario, Link, whoever, you, like, have very defining features of their character model that show which way they're facing. Kirby is, like, his little nubby arms are slightly less nubby. That must mean he's angled. So the one you're mentioning on 3DS, they actually have an arrow that like points where he's facing, and they could only do that from kind of a top-down perspective, isometric perspective. So that's why that one was built that way. And this is the first real like he's in a normal 3D world situation. But what's been interesting to see with Nintendo in general when they do 3D is unless the game is already like on the Z-axis, like unless it's already moving into the screen like F-Zero or Star Fox did, Nintendo really shook up the game in some major way. I mean, I said Kid Icarus before, like we went from a platformer to a flying shooter on-rail action thing, a thing that still deserves to be on Switch, by the way, like with a port, but nonetheless just like this thing, or like, Metroid Prime versus Metroid, going from side-scroller to first-person adventure, or like something like Excite Bike, like the original is pretty arcadey, like literally it was in an arcade machine at one point. Yeah, Excite Bike 64 is like this more realistic thing. But the one that I think kind of best points to what happened with Kirby is Mario. Because like initially Mario was like the same sort of extreme. Like as much as we collectively love Mario 64, it was a pretty big shift from 2D Mario if you think about it. Like the ratio of actual platforming gameplay to like more exploratory, I guess, gameplay, like it pretty drastically shifted, because you went to these more open areas. There were places to run around and explore. You weren't just bopping enemies and doing quick reflex jumping. There's like a lot more like kind of slower stuff happening. And that was all like every 3D game Nintendo did. That was the extreme they did. And a lot of these franchises have kind of ebbed and flowed back in the direction of kind of their 2D mindsets, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's like Metroid Other M, that existed and tried to kind of be 3D but 2D. Excite Bike went arcadey again with Excite Truck. Mario zigzagged all over the place. I mean, we've gotten stuff as open as Mario Sunshine and Odyssey and as close to the like 2D spirit as 3D Land and 3D World. And where I'm going with all this is what I find interesting about Kirby and the Forgotten Land is that they didn't take that big swing into 3D. I think that's why it felt so familiar to you. Like, they didn't go full Mario 64. They went Mario 3D World. They kept as close to like the 2D traditional Kirby as you can get, but they did just enough to make it make sense in 3D. So that means you have the exact same emphasis on, you know, just making your way through a fairly linear level, only now has a little more movement in all 4 directions. You're still trying to find secrets in nooks and crannies, except those hidden spots are now, you know, maybe in the screen instead, just on the left of the screen. And overall, like the ratio of light platforming to level exploration to kind of the enemy, you know, enemy power stealing and attacking, it all feels very one-to-one with what we know from the 2D Kirby games. And I think that's partly why it feels how it feels to you, Angel. Because it is the closest transition Nintendo's probably ever done from 2D to 3D. And a thing I found kind of interesting as I played through it, is it seems to really wear that Mario inspiration on its sleeve. Like, the developers almost seem to pick and choose their favorite, like, 3D but inspired by 2D Mario moments and, like, find a way to fold them into Kirby. Like, you know, you have the main level design approach from 3D World, but also there's at least one level of experience where you're flying through rings into the screen that feels identical gameplay-wise to the Plessy Water Rapids in 3D World. Like, the length of it, the way the secrets are set up, how you collect things, what the rings look like it's very similar. Or for Mario Sunshine, do you remember those challenge stages they had in Mario Sunshine where it was like pure platforming? You were like kind of sent to these weird, colorful, floating block spaces, and you were specifically tested on different flood abilities, like different water pack abilities. Yeah. So Forgotten Land has that too. Same approach. There's floating blocks and colorful spaces. You're kind of, you know, you go into them and like this independent little challenge. Only now you're being tested on how well you can use Kirby's abilities instead of like the flood. There's even some like coincidental things that I don't even know if they're coincidental. Like, they seem weirdly so Forgotten Land has an amusement park themed area, just like Mario Sunshine did. And this amusement park themed area is covered in sludge you need to clean up from one of the stages, just like Sunshine has. And at one point in the amusement park, you actually hop on an on-rails roller coaster segment that moves the camera behind Kirby's back and stays locked in, just like Mario Sunshine had. And I'm not saying how, like, ripped anyone off or anything, but what I'm saying is that it feels like they looked at all the different ways Mario in particular tackled 3D after being 2D. Abilities. That's true. That is a very good point.
Mario,
maybe there's a deeper metaphor.
He may as well have been sucking people up in Odyssey.
Yeah, that's true. But no, I see what Kevin's saying. Yeah, maybe this is some sort of deeper allegory for Kirby as a character.
Up and not a different word.
What was that?
Nothing.
Okay. But yeah, it just seems like it just feels like they looked at all the different ways that Mario in particular tackled 3D after being 2D for so long, and then kind of cherry picked what they felt worked best to keep the spirit of 2D Kirby while technically adding that third dimension. So yeah, it's a very interesting like mix of like what Kirby is and what getting into 3D in the minimalist way possible is, but I think perhaps this is maybe where our opinions are going to diverge a little bit more drastically, Angel, because I'm finding that, yes, it is kind of familiar, but that lower key, like 2D to 3D transition, like, I'm having a lot of fun with it. Like, the game isn't wildly different from what you experienced before, like you said, but, like, it's just incredibly well polished. I mean, the graphics alone are so just, like, pleasant to look at, for lack of a better word, but it's really charming, and there's a lot of actually clever design ideas as you go through it. My favorite being by far the whole mouthful mode thing. So I don't know if you guys remember when the game was first announced, but we saw that abandoned world and that got a real like ooh out of me, like, oh, this is cool. And then when they showed the first gameplay and how detached it seemed from that world, that changed from ooh to just oh, like, okay. But mouthful mode turns out to actually kind of be the missing bridge between the world and the traditional gameplay, because yes, you know, they've done similar in other games with Kirby's Animal Friends or whatever, but what's fun with mouthful mode is how it ties in parts of the new Kirby or the new world that Kirby's exploring, I guess I should say, with the gameplay, and it really is where like the bulk of the gameplay variety comes from. Some of the things you encounter are very straightforward. You know, you inhale a cone, you can smash cracks in the ground. Inhale a staircase or a vending machine, you know, you gain access to the ability to like reach spots or shoot at out of reach things. But then there are ones that actually altered the gameplay and the physics. So like Car Kirby, he has time trial tracks you eventually race on, and they have like this rock and roll racing kind of physics, which is very different from anything else in the game. And then there's stuff like Arch Kirby, which was the flying thing I was mentioning when that kind of parallels Plessy. You know, it also kind of feels like Diet Star Fox. But, you know, there's these different ones that aren't just normal platforming, they actually change up the gameplay. And even with some of the less gameplay altering ones, like the light bulb Kirby, which you need to use in a specific Haunted Mansion stage. Like, it does change your pacing because it's not super innovative or wild, but, you know, they do that bit where you can only see so much in front of you and you have to kind of light the way and walk carefully. And in a game that's very breezy and you just kind of go at your own pace, it doesn't matter. Having to slow down is variety. And that stage, by the way, has some amazing music, the Haunted Mansion. It's by far the best song in the game, I think. And just as an aside, I mean, Angel, you mentioned you heard some of the music. I feel like the music's super good in this game.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
Yeah, they even have a full theme song with lyrics at the start. That's like a straight up anime opening.
Oh, like Odyssey.
Like it.
Well,
yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's just like Kirby music in general across the series is always on point, and it's definitely true here. I mean, I feel like I kind of said in passing at the start of our Kirby talk, but Kirby won a Grammy, or specifically a cover group called 8-Bit Big Band. They won Best Arrangement, Instrumental, or Acapella for their arrangement of Meta Knight's Revenge from Kirby Superstar. And that's just like, it doesn't say how, you know, the quality of the music, that they won a Grammy. It's like one of the few games to ever win a Grammy, or pieces of game music. That's pretty cool. But anyway, point is, the sheer variety and frequency of those mouthful mode abilities had so far, for me, kept things actually feeling fresh, a little different, fun. And they serve as really kind of the heart, I guess you could call it, of the cleverness of the game. Like, the level themes themselves are cool, you know, whether it's an abandoned theme park like I was talking about before, whether it's like an old decaying mall that doubles as kind of a maze because, you know, what giant mall isn't. But like, they really had some fun with the theming and mouthful mode because they needed to find a way to make Kirby these different shapes and have these different objects. Like, putting it in our world and putting it with things we're familiar with made sense, and it kind of pulls together the entire theming and stuff with the gameplay, and it's pretty cool. That said, a point I will concede readily is, as much fun as I'm having, the game is relatively simple. Like, it is. I don't want that to be confused with lack of effort or bare bones, but the amount of energy the developers clearly put into everything is super apparent. You know, instead of just a menu to view past cutscenes, you literally walk Kirby into a little movie theater and he like sits down with popcorn and like watches the cutscene. Or like, if you go to the music player when you unlock it, there's literally a band of Kirby characters playing the songs. And if a band member's instrument isn't in that moment of the song, the band member will actually stop playing. Like, it's not a generic canned animation for every song. Like, they put effort into this thing, and it's a mindset in the gameplay too. Like that, you see it there to some degree. You know, like the developers seem to really try to leverage each inch of every level for these secondary goals you need to go back and complete. Some of them you may find on your first pass, but the ones missed are only revealed to you after you beat the stage, which then feeds right back into the main loop of wanting to open as much of your Waddle Dee town as possible, because every secret you find, you get more Waddle Dees. What was I going to say? Sorry, I lost a train of thought. Yeah, and then that's what I was going to say. And not just the main stages have those secondary things, but the challenge stages, there's actually a time to beat for each of those challenge stages where they have you try your copy abilities in more extreme ways. And that actually, like, there's some like light speed running type skills needed for that. So the developers did, with what they have, try to do a lot. And it's actually interesting, there's a Washington Post interview where apparently stuff like the challenge stages was specifically added because Star Allies DLC, which was like harder than the regular game, was extremely well received. And, you know, they saw that, like, I guess you could say, quote unquote, real gamers were out there and playing Kirby. So they tried to give some, like, more intense stuff within the Kirby definition of intense, in this game. So it's actually a good interview in general if you're curious, like, how they came up with mouthful mode and stuff. So we'll link to it on this episode's blog post at ramtown.com. But what I was saying is that the game is actually relatively simple. Because, yeah, they have all this stuff, but the simplicity is in the deeper mechanics. Like Kirby's copy abilities. You know, Angel, you mentioned you're excited to try the power-up thing, or interested maybe to try the power-up thing. So each can be upgraded multiple times as you collect money and power stones from levels and challenge stages and whatnot. But it just, I don't know, it feels right for so much more. There's only 12 powers in total. And there's no way to combine them as power combos like in Kirby 64 or, you know, there's no way to even do something like the friend abilities and Star Allies when you're playing co-op. Like, they're just like, you have these 12 powers, they look a little snazzier when you upgrade them, and that's about it. It feels very, like, for a Kirby game, pretty minimal in terms of the impact of variety they have. And similarly, like the mini games are very surface level. Like I don't know how better to word it. Again, I'm not saying they're bad. They're fun, but there's zero chance any of them are gonna get spun off into their own eShop releases in the way that a past Kirby minigame has. To give you an idea, the cooking one, the Wallaby, like you help Wallaby cook. All you do is need to distinguish increasingly faster images of what a Wallaby wants, and then you hit a corresponding button. And some of them are silhouetted, and some of them aren't, and that. And it's just like you just hit left, right, whatever. The fishing one is fishing. Not much to say there. And then there's maybe a kind of like intentional, maybe unintentional Kirby tilt and tumble reference of a minigame where you rotate a maze to land to like roll Kirby in a hole at the end. And then there's a boss rush mode, which does bring back a fan favorite character and has some high score stuff and a cool presentation, but it's really just a straight to the point boss rush mode. So really what boils down, whether it's intentional or not, like what the simplicity does do is leave the game open for a really awesome sequel, probably. Like there's absolutely room to expand the power system, expand the mini games, maintain the 3D elements, keep something like mouthful mode. We'll see if they do a direct sequel or maybe some sort of DLC. Nothing's been announced yet. In fact, in every interview, the developer's like, "Oh, we got nothing about DLC to say." But like as is, I am enjoying, like I am finding Kirby and the Forgotten Land to be a really enjoyable playthrough with a lot of charm. It's just simple. It's just a little more straightforward. It's not gonna like knock your socks off like you're saying, Andrew. Like it has some familiarity to it. There's enough different stuff that for me I'm finding it really fun, especially in the production values. But yeah, if you're looking for some like revolution for Kirby or some crazy thing that is now 3D but meets the deepest Kirby has gone with his power system and stuff, yeah, that's not here. And I think for some folks like you, Angel, that is the understandable drawback that took you from going, I'm probably gonna get this, to I'll sit back and wait. It's it's nothing against the game. The game's very well done.
It definitely wasn't like, it's not like I had a like, oh yeah, I'm definitely not getting this game. It's not for me. Like it looks fun. Like I enjoy like simple games from time to time. Sometimes it's just nice and relaxing. Sometimes that's what you want from the video game. But there are also those same types of games, even though I enjoy them, are also the kinds of games that can wait a year or 2 or 3 or even a decade sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with Forgotten Lands. Like it's not the culmination of everything Kirby's done. It's the capturing of what the essence of Kirby is and sort of pivoting it into a different dimension. And then they left it at that essence. Like they didn't go all the way in to the deepest things they've done. They just kind of like left it at like, this is pure Kirby, but now 3D, which is all you really need to do. In a way, it could be like a soft reboot. I mean, they're saying in these same interviews I keep referencing, they're not ruling out that Kirby has to always be 3D now. They might go the Mario and Zelda route where there's some 2D Kirbys, there's some 3D Kirbys. Obviously, there's the experimental side of the Kirby franchise. So, like, this is just another approach versus, like, the kind of be-all, end-all, this is the future of Kirby. So, yeah, it's just, I think we're so used to the 3D transition being such, like, this big deal for Nintendo. And this one's really fun and charming, but it's not, like, a big deal. It's just Kirby's in 3D now. So, yeah. But anyway, that's Kirby. Kevin, you didn't try the demo or anything, did you?
No, I did not.
Are you a Kirby guy? Do you play many Kirby games?
I dabble in Kirby.
That's fair. Do you tend to dabble more in the regular platformers or like kind of weird experimentals?
Kirby. I will try whatever game that Kirby, whatever new type of Kirby game there is. Fair.
Except this one so far. To a degree. There's definitely some that are more similar, but yeah, I get what you mean. So yeah, I guess that's Kirby then. And I'm sure every listener that sat through that with bated breath now gets, waiting for Angel, your mystery game that I'm overhyping. We're here. The floor is yours. What is this game?
Yeah, I really wish you had brought it up.
On Elden Ring. Let's go, baby.
It's gonna be the most like generic. Yeah, it's either Elden Ring or it's gonna be like, oh, I played a demo of like Photo Dojo on the 3DS again.
Nah, it's just it's a game. It's a demo I found the other day because I just recently upgraded my Switch to a 1 terabyte SD card. So now I finally have all the games that I've ever, purchased or downloaded on it at once. Because I easily ran out of space really quickly. I had a 200 gig one, and I think I was only able to hold like a third of my library. And as I was just perusing demos to add, just to see what was out there, what else I can download, because now I have like 700 extra gigs. And the folders actually now come in handy just because there are so many. Like, I just made a party game section because, damn, I didn't realize I just had that many that we actually rotate between. But the point is, the game that I played was CRAYON Shin-chan, The Storm Called Flaming KASUKABE Runner Trial version.
I just want to say before going further, this was worth all the build-up. Because that was out of left field. And that's the best type of response you can have to that dramatic build-up I gave it. So, definitely worth the hype.
This is on the U.S. store.
Yeah, so I have many, questions about this. Because, for one thing, I was kind of surprised to find a Shin-chan game. For those that aren't aware, it's an anime about a kindergartner. It has kind of crude humor. But
That's putting it mildly.
But typically,
yeah, it's very mild. Even I know that.
But typically, it's media, and more specifically, it's video game media, doesn't usually reflect that crude humor. If anything, it usually goes in the other direction. Like, I've seen that it has some games on the App Store that are literally for kids that are supposed to teach them how to do their bed, how to to remind us to help their parents do laundry. Teaching them basic skills, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, and this one is just an endless runner, and is unabashedly a mobile game that was just slapped on the 3DS. They didn't even hide the fact that it's primarily touch controls with, I guess button controls also thrown in there, because everything tells you to touch it as opposed to, you can just press A. And for some reason, for it being a 2D, a 2D endless runner, and Shin-chan's run animation looks neat, but yeah, for some reason it has performance issues. It hits you at the beginning of every level, and it's almost a weird, you could tell it's unnatural delay when he jumps. I don't know if that's a symptom of it being on, I guess, mobile first and then going to console, but yeah, it's not a very fun game to control half the time. And I think the part that just kind of bugs me a little is the fact that this game, of all the games they ported over to the US, and yeah, it has English. Well, you can also change the language to English. All the voicing is still in Japanese even when you change it to English. But yeah, they brought this game over when there is an actual Shin-chan game on the Switch that is kind of I don't even know what to describe it as. You're kind of exploring your neighborhood. It's a very chill, summery vibe. It's not a crude game either, but it just looks like an exploratory, fetch quest kind of game that actually looks kind of neat. And I'm kind of curious why that one wasn't ported over instead of this one. Obviously, maybe this one just a lot quicker and easier, but yeah, was just surprised to find a Shin-chan game. Was kind of not surprised or a little disappointed that it ended up being a not great game. Because, you're just jumping over giant vegetables and doing random stuff that never really happens in the show. It's just there now. And yeah. And, it just reminds me that the Switch is a nesting ground for these mobile ports that, they don't even try to change anything about them. But I guess it's just the world we live in.
So you're saying it's not worth its usual $10 asking price?
I'm not even sure how much it costs normally, but yeah, I would say it's not worth the $10 asking price.
Yeah, it's normally $10. Right now it's only $6, 40% off. And I looked it up while you were talking. You forgot to you didn't put the right emphasis on the title. It's all caps, CRAYON Shin-chan, then lowercase, The Storm Called, then all caps again, Flaming KASUKABE Runner with 2 exclamation marks. And if that hodgepodge of grammar doesn't sum up what you're saying about the game, I don't know what does. But yeah, it doesn't look great. You're right. It definitely looks mobile game ported, which is kind of the sucky thing with the Switch these days is it's good there's so many games, but Nintendo seems to have stopped caring about quality control. Stuff gets on there that's broken, stuff gets on there that's kind of not really optimized, like what you're describing. I don't know. I feel like they could clamp down a hair. Like, it's cool you can say we have 6,000 games or whatever, but like, if 2,000 of them aren't really playable in a fun way, doesn't that kind of hurt? Like, isn't that what happened in the NES days that led to, like, or in the Atari days that led to the NES having to have the Nintendo seal of quality on every game because Nintendo wanted to make sure they didn't sort of drag down the overall quality? Like, I don't know. It seems weird, to your point.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of broken.
I mean, for a while, it seems like the Switch has become Steam 2.0. So, I mean, it's just kind of more proof of it. It's not the worst proof of it. I mean, like, there is a game there that's playable. It has some neat stuff, but yeah, like, the English is kind of broken in the text form that it has. Because, you know, it's not, there's no dubbing anywhere. It's just English text, and even that text is sometimes a little confusing. Like, because they're trying to describe power-ups, and I don't really get what some of the power-ups do, just because the grammar is not that great. So, yeah, that's always something. But
question: did the Nintendo seal of approval guarantee you a good game, or did it just guarantee you a working game?
It guaranteed you a game that would function correctly on the platform.
Right,
yeah.
Which most of them do, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not like Nintendo was ever curating their games.
Yeah, you could say that all of these, I guess,
true.
would still have the Nintendo seal of quality by that purpose. But I think fans over the years kind of just gave it that meaning that it meant that Nintendo only had good quality games. But yeah, it's far from the truth. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, the Wii era is a good example.
I mean,
now that I think
just look at the 64. It has
a similar problem.
I mean, come on.
Whoa, shots fired. I was going to say the Wii era with all those mini game collections that weren't good, but okay, we'll just take shots at Star Fox. There was a game on the Wii called, like, Birthday Party, and it's a bunch of really low-budget, low-rent mini games that are themed around a birthday party. It was a whole game of just birthday party, and it had the stamp of approval, so... But yeah, Angel, in terms of this game having broken English, the description on Nintendo.com, enjoy Shin-chan and his friends wearing a variety of cosplay clothes, well known to people familiar with anime and movies. Do they mean just the mediums of anime and movies? Or like his anime and movies? Like, they're missing a word there, I think. But definitely a weird find on your part. So let me ask you this then. If this is the example of what not to do with an anime game, are there any anime adaptations that sort of stand above the rest in your mind as like, this is the proper way? Like, you know, like I know back in college, One Piece on Wii was a big hit among some of our friends. Like, is there anything like that there? I was like, everyone should try and strive for that quality level of an anime adaptation.
Don't think I've played too many anime games on the Switch. I mean, you know,
or in general even, like, I mean,
the
old Naruto fighting game or anything.
The Demon Slayer one looks neat, but I've also heard it's like a dumbed down version of the Ninja Storm games, which already weren't the most complicated games technical wise. So if they're that's almost kind of disappointing. But I mean, visually they look great. I really liked Naruto. I forgot what it's called. Ninja Clash or something. It was on the GameCube.
The fighting one, right?
Clash of Ninja.
Clash of the Ninja. Yeah, like those, my brother and I really, really loved. Like, those are really great. We really got into those. They were a little closer to a traditional fighter, but still had some arena elements. It wasn't like as bombastic as Ninja Storm, but the mechanics were just more fun and competitive, which I guess gave it an edge to us.
Was that on PS2 as well? The Naruto
Probably.
Fighting game? I seem to remember. I don't think it was Ninja Clash or Clash of Ninja, but
Clash of Ninja was Nintendo exclusive.
Oh yeah, it made it up to the Wii.
Yeah, and Ninja Storm were Sony exclusives.
Okay, yeah, because I do remember our friends playing the PS2 one.
Xbox had a 3D open world game for Naruto.
Yeah, they had. For some reason.
Was it Monkey Chronicles or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wonder what happens to that. Well, I guess it didn't go far, but yeah, I don't know. Is there any anime-based games that off the top of your head that you're like, I actually really like this one? Because besides that one, I'm kind of drawing a blank on literally anything else.
I honestly thought,
Kevin,
you'd have a list just ready to go, knowing you, but
yeah. I mean, there's a Mob Psycho game I've been wanting to try on mobile by Crunchyroll that seems decent, but console-wise...
I know Dragon Ball Fighters was well
Oh,
received.
yeah, Dragon Ball Fighters.
Or Fighter Z
that's
was well
That's
received.
not an anime game. That's a fighting game.
Yeah.
It's a straight up a fighting game.
Fighter first, anime second versus anime
Well,
first.
yeah,
fighting
because I'm
second.
thinking
Yeah.
like what anime game like has like a narrative that you follow all the way through that was like still really great, but I mean, they did do well in
Shin-chan
fighting.
doesn't.
Well, not this one, but I mean, the other Shin-chan game, I actually bought it for my friend for his, I forgot for what, birthday or Christmas. And I was thinking of getting one for myself just to practice Japanese, because, unfortunately the whole game is in Japanese, but that's kind of a good thing as well. I mean, that game looks decent, but it also looks very, it's a very chill vibe kind of game. So, like, for an anime game,
right.
I would kind of like something that would be big by the end. And, that one might satisfy some urges, but not all of them. I guess Pokemon?
I think.
That doesn't really count.
No, Pokemon was first. If we're veering off just pure anime, there is one I always wanted to try, and I actually was just pulling it up to make sure I get the full name right. Apparently I downloaded it at some point, so it's on my 3DS, and I just never...
Probably that day that you got really, really drunk.
I'm sure I drunk e-shopped. Yes, but no, Attack of the Friday Monsters.
Other crazy stuff, you drunk purchase games.
Yeah, people buy $1,000 of items, and I'm just like, well, if I get Attack of the Monsters for $8 on the eShop. But yeah, Attack of the Friday Monsters on the 3DS. It wasn't inspired. It wasn't an anime, but it was inspired by almost the like kind of slice of life, slower pace.
That's actually what the Shin-chan game kind of looks like, just without the giant monster.
Oh, really? Yeah, but I should go.
And that game was fun. I enjoyed that one.
Oh, you did actually play it. Okay.
Yeah,
Would you? Do you think I'd like it?
Pretty sure.
Should I go?
Here.
You might have. Should I go to my parents' house and get my 3DS, which is still sitting there unused for a year now?
I don't know, because like there's like a card game. You kind of have to like collect cards and build a deck and do that. And I don't know. I feel like you may not bother.
Okay. You saved me a drive, I guess. But yeah, no, the vibe of that game, from what I remember when it was announced and everything, felt very, very, like, an original anime, if you will. But, like, it felt very of that, like, cut from that cloth.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's that game.
I think that was worth all my hyping up. Absolutely. I guarantee you no one, unless they happen to look at our topic list ahead of time and got spoiled, no one would have figured out that's what you were going to say.
Why don't you just keep it as Angel's Mystery Game as it is here?
Because we always link for more information. I guess we could link the words mystery game to the corresponding. All right. Maybe we'll do that. But yeah, okay. So that was
is CRAYON Shin-chan's creator the one that like fell off a cliff?
Wait, what?
If it is, that's the first I've heard about it. Oh my gosh, is that? Wow. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that's
I'm pretty sure
intense.
He fell off a cliff and passed.
Fell off as in like accident or?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay. That makes it a little.
I think he was like hiking or something.
Kind of weird to say like a little better, but I mean that still sucks. Because I thought it was I should have laughed. Because I thought they ended their life. Well, yeah, okay. Well, yeah.
If you want to be super callous and not indecent, but not inhumane, but if you want to be super like about it, someone dying is a great transition to our enthusiasm for games to the bummers of the news. I'm kidding. I would never actually do that, but I just did, I guess. But no, before we get to that, Kevin, was there anything you want to? You've been playing much? Anything you want to bring up?
No, I haven't been playing much. I have been playing Elden Ring a lot, but that is for a random Nintendo.
What are the odds? And the answer I know is 0% that we'll ever see anything Elden Ring on a Nintendo platform. We did get Dark Souls eventually, I think.
We did get Dark Souls eventually. Huh.
It might have to be like
going with like a
Switch
5%
successor.
chance.
Okay, okay, so not 0.
And to be fair, that 5%, that means it's a cloud version.
Yeah. It's you know what bums me out about the cloud version situation is so Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Is cloud on Switch and is regularly released as physical software on every other platform, and on every other platform it's had pricing range from full price down to like $15-$20, And I keep going like, I've heard great things about the game. I just want it to go on sale on Switch, but because it's only the cloud version, it's only controlled by Square Enix, and there's no like, retailer trying to move units or anything, it's never on sale. And that's something I don't even think we ever thought about when we talked about like the transition to cloud and stuff like that. Maybe it gets leapfrogged by Game Pass becoming the thing and everyone just gets like a la carte, not a la carte, but all you can eat, like one price. But like cloud games are never necessarily going to be on sale. Maybe a publisher will sometimes, like to do with digital downloads, but the incentive is there's not as much incentive, I feel like. And that's kind of a bummer. Speaking of bummers. Did we mention the guy from... No, speaking of bummers, the news. The Bummer Brigade, if you will. Zelda was delayed. E3 was canceled. We may break that down a little bit. So first we got the Zelda delay. It was going from a 2022 release to a spring 2023 release, which is a bummer that we have to wait a little longer to play it. But is anyone actually surprised?
No, and
Nope.
Not even feeling like it's a bummer whatsoever because, like I said, backlog, plenty of things to do, barely enough time to play games lately. So, yeah, take all the time you want. Otherwise, it's just going to be sitting in my shelf anyway, so...
Yeah, I feel like bummer. It's just it's a high concept bummer because I actually don't mind either because the lineup is pretty. I mean, it didn't seem like it was happening this year. Like it's like on paper, it's like, oh yeah, that's a bummer, but in actuality, it's like, oh, not really. There's plenty. Once we learned that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were coming this holiday, like about a month ago, and it felt like the writing was on the wall, right? Like, yeah, it just seems like, I mean, Nintendo could have, I guess, used a June Direct to reveal the name and the first real gameplay and then launch it later this year. But the radio silence, the fact that they have an equally big, if not bigger seller coming out right at the same time, like, yeah, this, couple that with the fact that Zelda games are probably the most delayed of all of Nintendo's franchises. Like, I actually went back because I don't have a life. I actually looked this all up. Ocarina of Time was delayed a year. Twilight Princess was delayed over a year. Skyward Sword was delayed over a year. Breath of the Wild went from 2015 to 2017. Like, this is par for the course. And it's not at all uncommon for a Zelda game to be announced, like, 2 to 3 years before we eventually see it. Like, Twilight Princess was first shown at E3 2004 and didn't come out till the end of 2006. So, like, this isn't surprising to me at all. I guess the question is, do you think the way Nintendo handled the delay announcement correctly with that video of producer, Eiji Aonuma talking over pretty much all old footage? Like, did that work, not work? Because I feel like they're, like, people online are kind of split about, like they all were understanding, except the people that were annoying, but, like, there seemed to be some, like, well, why didn't they throw us a bone? Like, what do you guys think?
I didn't even watch the video because I didn't feel there was a necessity to watch it. What?
And who gets mad at, like, oh, they should... What? No.
They should have given us a teaser at least or something.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
That is horrible.
So entitled, God.
Yeah. It's funny because they did, in the video, give a small teaser. And most people are just like, oh, it wasn't enough. They show Link with some shaggy hair, some new clothes. He has little Triforce braids in his shirt, which is kind of cool. But then they show like a decaying Master Sword or like melted or something. And I feel like that's something to latch on to if you really need something to hold out for those extra 3 months. Like, you could speculate on that. It reminds me of in like 2000, which E3 must have been 2009 when they announced Skyward Sword, but all they did was release a piece of art that showed Link and Fi back to back, like, or Fi, or however you say her name, instead of having a Master Sword, he had her, and everyone's like, oh, what's this mean? Like, I feel like the melting Master Sword, for like the millisecond it was there, was that. Like, that's something, if you really want to spend a month or two speculating on what that could mean or how that could be possible, you could, But yeah, there are some people who are just like, oh, why didn't you like do a trailer anyway? It's just like, I knew I had to get a haircut. Like, he had more important priorities. But yeah, what was amusing to me, besides like the entitlement that you put, Kevin, was the aftermath of the announcement, the sheer variety of reactions and hot takes that came out of this delay. Like, everyone seems to be thinking this is so much bigger of a thing than it is. Like, it's just a couple months, guys. But like, in one corner, you had a ton of people thinking that this means Switch 2 is confirmed because, hey, Breath of the Wild 1 launched alongside the Switch in the same spring window 6 years prior, and that's right in line with the typical length of past Nintendo console generations. And there's an NVIDIA leak the other week from hackers that showed that there is a Switch successor in development, because of course there is. And like Switch 2 was trending on Twitter for like most of the day, and I'm just like looking at like, guys, you know Nintendo keeps saying they want the Switch to go longer than any other generation in their history. They've described the console as being midway through its life within the last year. Like, we're not getting a whole new Switch in, 11 months from now? Like, I can't even see a half step like the Switch Pro, given the OLED model won't even be 18 months old at that point. And as you guys know, I was a big believer in all those Switch Pro reports. But because I don't have a life, I looked it up. The only
ridiculous. I had no idea. I still stand by my thing. I don't know why anybody thought that was coming. But
well, I think if we want to dive into it, I think it was at one point and still is at some point stuff they're working on. I think things got conflated in terms of what's coming when due to chip shortages, due to pandemic timing. But what?
I thought Bloomberg's fault or whatever publication.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just... Yeah, Bloomberg was the spearheader of it, but they've been accurate before. It's hard to predict how things are going to go when multiple industries are completely upended by chip shortages and when Nintendo could easily have been working on multiple projects at once and those get conflated. Like, there's too many factors at play. But anyway, the only console that was released as quickly after an iteration were... Like, the only time Nintendo's done that were when they made a lesser powered version, like the 3DS XL came out, then the 2DS came out, or they simply resized versions of current hardware, like when the DSi XL came out within a year and a half of the DSi coming out. So, to me, I can't imagine after an OLED model coming in, last October, that in March we're going to be getting some crazy different Switch, like people seem to be thinking this means. If anything, maybe we get like an OLED Switch Lite. That seems more on brand with how Nintendo does these things. But yeah, I mean, do you think they're going to release Zelda software? Or do you think there's any chance of any sort of like hardware or something to kind of kickstart it, like they did with Majora's Mask and like the new 3DS or anything like that?
I don't think so. And I guess beyond that, like until I just hear something from Nintendo, I'll just continue to not think so.
Fair enough. Kevin, are you gunning for any sort of hardware or thinking any sort of hardware is going to happen?
Nope.
Yeah, sounds like we're on the same page. Take number 2 I saw about the Zelda delay. This one was much smaller, but kind of made me smile. I saw like a smattering of people pointing out, hey, Zelda's delay means that Sonic Frontiers will be more successful. So it's been a while since...
that was going to be that game's issue.
Yeah. So it's been, for those who don't remember it too well, because it's been a while since it was announced. Yep, it's coming out later this year. Yeah, they haven't talked about it in a while. It was announced last year. But yeah, Frontiers is this year. It's, as a refresher for those listening, it's the open world approach of Breath of the Wild through the lens of Sonic. And I guess on paper, if people aren't buying Breath of the Wild 2, that does mean literally less competition for Sonic. But like, what market analyst or whoever is out there going like, well, people have to buy Sonic if they need their Breath of the Wild fix. Like, I don't recall Immortals Phoenix Rising, Ubisoft's Breath of the Wild riff, like selling that well because it was 3 years after Breath of the Wild and people need more Breath of the Wild. Like, I'm not buying Sonic Frontiers because of Zelda not being out this year. I assume you guys aren't going to be doing that either.
And to be fair, those that are buying Frontier are going to buy Zelda anyways.
Yeah,
it's not like somebody's going to buy Frontiers because Zelda's not out.
Yeah, like no one equates those two franchises as interchangeable. Yeah, it's.
I mean, I guess the only people it might impact are like, kids that can only get like one game like every 8 months or something like that,
But let's roll with that for a second. If you're a kid and it's between Sonic, the new Pokemon, and what was going to be Zelda, where do you have to go do Sonic? Actually, you know what? I take that back. In light of the movie, in light of the resurgence of Sonic as a character, there will be some kids that will choose Sonic over Pokemon, actually. So maybe there is that small slice of little Timmies in the world that want Sonic as their one game instead of Zelda as their one game. But so maybe I was being a little facetious about the Sonic take. Maybe it's not that bad for a certain demographic. But the real take I did not understand and still don't understand coming out of that delay is the one by investors. So following the news of the delay, Nintendo's stock dropped 6%. And I'm confused about Nintendo's doomed. And I'm confused by this for a few reasons. Okay, because first, sure, Zelda is a big franchise, and now there won't be sales of it in calendar year 2022. But the game isn't canceled, and there aren't people who are like, well, if I don't buy a Zelda in a month that has 2022 attached to it, I'm never buying it. Like, the game's literally out a couple months later. And as the original Breath of the Wild showed, you can sell gangbusters for years with an initial release outside of the holiday windows. So, like, I don't know why they're like, oh, Nintendo's not going to sell it. Especially because, second point, spring can still include the same fiscal year. Like, Nintendo's sales year for financial purposes is April 1st to March 31st. And they often call March spring in their marketing. And there was zero indication from Nintendo that they're expecting software sales to decline in light of this delay. In fact, all we have right now is their opposite attitude, which is that they have momentum at the moment with sales throughout this year. In their financial report we talked about back in February, they raised their software sales forecast for, this past fiscal year from $200 million to $220 million. So for the first part of the calendar year 2022, they're expecting to go up in sales. And there's no indication that even with Zelda delayed, they're going to go down. Like, that kind of brings me to the third point of all this. Nintendo has a crazy lineup this year. Like, they're not, they don't have the sequel to the 20 million seller. That won't make it this holiday. That'll be probably March or April. But at the end of this month, they're releasing the sequel to the 82 million seller Wii Sports with Switch Sports. And this is something I tweeted, but they, this summer, they're releasing the sequel to the 13 million selling Splatoon 2 with Splatoon 3. This holiday, they had Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which is, the follow-up to an entry in Pokemon, Sword and Shield, that sold 24 million. It's now the second best seller in franchise history. It's, I think, combined outsold Breath of the Wild. And between all that, we've got sequels to multiple multi-million seller games. Each of these have sold over 3 million. Their predecessors, Mario Strikers, Xenoblade, Fire Emblem. Like, there's... and you could argue, okay, Fire Emblem is not actual sequel. It's like a Hyrule Warriors type of deal. But okay, it sold over 2 million, Hyrule Warriors. So, like, there's multi-million sellers stacking the lineup, like sequels to all of them. Like, if there's ever a time for Nintendo to just up and delay a flagship game like Zelda, this kind of feels like the year. Like, the lineup is set. It's fine. We essentially know every major release between now and the holidays, excluding maybe the month of October and December itself. And, one of those months, Nintendo could easily slot in the delayed Advance Wars, if they feel the timing's appropriate. So really, we know everything but 1 month of their release calendar. And I'm sure they still have some other surprises in store anyway, too. Like, we don't know when Bayonetta 3 is coming out, if it makes it this year. Do you guys think it's going to make it this year?
I will leave that. No. What's his name? It's not Hamada.
It's no, wait, that's the wrong guy. I was thinking of the guy that did Wonderful 101 and Astral Chain. That's not the guy that's doing Bayonetta, right?
Is that not him?
Is
Kamiya.
it him?
Yeah.
Is it Kamiya?
Kamiya?
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
guess it is the same guy. Never mind.
Kamiya says that it'll be ready when it's ready, so I'll just wait for him to say something.
Yeah, that sounds to me like 2022 is not concrete, which isn't a problem because, again, it's a stacked lineup. And there's got to be other stuff. Like, if you look at the turnaround time from Switch Sports announcement to release, Switch Sports, the sequel to the 82 million seller, that was 2 months. If you look at, like, the gap from announcement to release of WarioWare Get Together last year during E3, that was 3 months. Like, we know so much and there's so much more. Like, even on a smaller scale, like, look at how Nintendo just, like, casually announces. And again, it's a much smaller scale, but my point is they don't need timelines anymore. Like, they casually announce Switch Online titles the day they're available. They announce them maybe a week in advance. Like, literally between our last episode and this episode, we had 2 separate Switch Online library updates. N64 Mario Golf was confirmed to come on April 15th, which is this coming week. And before that, on March 31st, we got Earthworm Jim 2, Dig Dug 2, Mappy Land. All those were added to the Super Nintendo and NES libraries. Like, it's smaller stakes, but, like, Nintendo just does things when they want. We know so much and there's so much more they can do, is what I'm trying to say. By the way, have you guys played any of those or have interest in any of those, like Earthworm Jim or Dig Dug or anything?
Particularly, like, I mean, at most, maybe Earthworm Jim, but not really.
I feel like I never got the appeal of Earthworm Jim when I was a kid. If that makes sense.
I mean, it's
weird. Yeah, it's it's weird that like they're doing Earthworm Jim 2 and not 1 or not both. But yeah, I don't know. Like it might, maybe it's part of that 90s. Like there was like a 90s trend of like not gross out, but like Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, Earthworm Jim, Real Monster. Like there was to varying degrees. There's like this thing in the 90s of like Garbage Pail Kids. Like, although that might be more 80s, but just like kind of like how let's do something gross and it'll be cool. And I feel like Earthworm Jim tried to, and it'll be edgy. Like it feels like I don't know. Earthworm Jim always seemed to be like kind of a hodgepodge of those ideas, and it never really clicked with me. But anyway, the one thing I actually am kind of into was they didn't even properly announce this at all, but they added a second version of Mario World. Like how they do like the SP editions. Like if you go into your Switch Online library, there's like special ones that are pre-made save files that dump you in certain parts or dump you at the end or whatever. They did it for Mario World, and it starts you in the post game. You've beaten everything, you have access to everything, but it's in the fall version. So when you beat Mario World normally, you do the hardest level in the game, the hardest set of levels. It's the funky stage, I think is the last one. You like run past all these coins and it's like you're a star player or whatever, and it's like this cool moment. And then they immediately dump you back at the start of the game, except everything's like off kilter. Like it's brown coloring because it's fall. Like Koopas are wearing like Mario masks. Like it's kind of like this weird like what if Mario World was Halloween, but you don't really know it's going to happen, and you're in this mindset like, oh, I just beat the hardest thing in the game, and then it's like, surprise, here's the super bizarro version. You can now access that immediately, which is kind of cool for people who didn't know it existed or have never gotten to it, but also I feel like kind of pulls the rug out from like the weird like switcheroo it pulls on you. But either way, it's kind of cool that like it's there and is now like this easily accessible thing. But anyway, broader point here is very significance in timing and or very varying degrees of significance and timing in terms of what Nintendo it chooses to announce and when, but Nintendo doesn't and hasn't needed to outline a full year's lineup this far in advance ever, and yet here we are with basically the full year lineup. So if Zelda's not there, it's fine. There's so much else, so many other things, and I think that's probably why, for me at least, when the other bad news shoe dropped that this year's Digital E3 is canceled, I was kind of just whatever about it. I mean, Summer Game Fest will still occur, and Jeff Keighley's actually slimming it down to the just in June. It won't be a multi-month thing. He heard us, Kevin. He heard us. It's going to be short this time. But yeah, Nintendo doesn't usually participate in Summer Game Fest. So I'm looking at this as like, well, Nintendo's going to likely do a direct in June regardless of how it's branded. And even if they didn't, we already know so much this year anyway. It's like in terms of bad news, this is like the easiest pill to swallow. I mean, what did you guys make of E3 being canceled this year in all forms?
I guess also just a tad surprised, but not really. I think you, more than anyone, was kind of saying that the writing was on the wall. It's only a matter of time. So when it finally happened, it was just more like oh, it finally happened. And that's pretty much it. I mean,
yep, I can say the same thing.
I mean, I guess I'm kind of glad I had the chance to at least go to it, which probably makes it feel less of a not surprise or not that big of a deal. If I hadn't ever gone to E3, I probably would have been like, oh man, there goes my chance, even if it probably wasn't going to be as great as before.
It stings less.
Yeah.
I should emphasize, so previously, for those who haven't been following the saga of E3, right now what's canceled is E3 2022, the digital show. After in January, I believe, they canceled the physical show. They claim it's coming back at some point. I think on a broader level, though, outright canceling it in its entirety is just another nail in the coffin. Like they claim they're doing the cancellation this year to focus on the physical digital show next year. But there were stories that came out of last year's digital-only E3 that were, they were charging publishers to be listed and to use the networking app. And frankly, if I'm a publisher and I have access to my audience directly through social media, like, why would I pay E3? What is the point of giving them money for what I could do on my own? And maybe smaller publishers have some benefit from that concept because they could get their name in front of more people. But if none of the big players participate because there's no benefit for them because they already have a way to cultivate their audience, then the the little guys don't get any benefit at that point either because no one's paying attention to E3. And this is especially true when Summer Game Fest is offering, as far as I'm aware, all the same organizing opportunities for no fee at all. It's just Jeff Keighley building his mega calendar that everyone sort of hooks into, and his, I guess, opening night live, or not opening night live, kickoff, whatever he calls it. So yeah, in a way, the way I kind of look at it is, in terms of writing on the wall, it feels like with E3 giving up the digital event this year and letting Summer Game Fest kind of run the month of June instead now, they're kind of losing their foothold to be able to make June their own again in the future. You know, like other conventions can step in for demoing, journalists can receive digital downloads of demos or attend small junkets, news can be handled through directs or similar videos. Like there's not, I feel like there was a legacy element to E3 where people rode with it because they didn't need to change their ways. Or if they did have to change their ways, it was collectively an effort within E3 where everyone collectively changed their ways. But Summer Game Fest is fully tagging in. That collective spot where everyone sort of evolves together is now Summer Game Fest, not E3. And the question in my mind becomes, does that mean that there is just no purpose for E3? Like, who is it for at that point? Because everything else could be covered in other ways. So is it just like the name? And at that point, does anyone care? Summer Game Fest builds enough brand recognition in the 3 years it will be going by next year? Like, I don't know. It's a weird spot that the ESA put themselves in by kind of dragging their feet with E3 and letting Jeff Keighley kind of rocket past them like that. So, well, we'll see. I mean, from my personal perspective, yeah, I'd really miss E3. I mean, Angel, you're saying you would have been bummed if you never got to go. I said it when they announced they were going digital a few months ago, and I'll say again now. I just love E3. I like spectacle. I like being in the center of all the video game things, interacting with people from the industry, playing unreleased games, getting to come back and share his impressions. Degree, honestly. It is a problem. It is a serious problem. I am sick, but this may be the cure. Maybe there's no more E3. But yeah, for many years when I was younger, I used to rely on reading and seeing videos of other people's experiences at E3 and reporting back and learning and kind of determine my own hype levels based on that. And to be on the other side of that equation and to get to sort of, as silly as it sounds, like pay back the gaming community for providing that to me by now providing that to them, it's cool. I'm gonna miss that. But I do, yeah, the writing's on the wall here. And as every non-E3 comes and goes, I think I'm slowly starting to accept that, yeah, that thing, that E3, it's done. It's not coming back. It was what it was. It was great while it was. Everything's just shifted. There's no, that's it. It's probably gonna be done. They claim next year. We'll see next year. But I think if it is next year's the last year. Which is a bummer to say, but just, reality of the situation. So, do we have anything chippier to end with? Because that was the last thing I had on my list.
Jason, sometimes you just have to end on a low note. I mean,
we really curbed that enthusiasm.
That's just life sometimes, and sometimes life ain't sunshine and rainbows.
Okay. Well, we're gonna leave everyone with that thought, I guess. I feel like we're in a weird lull in the Nintendo news cycle right now. Like, this was definitely one of our shorter episodes in a long time. And I think it's because, like, well, right now we should have had Advance Wars, but for obvious reasons that got delayed. And Nintendo's probably whole marketing cadence was the drumbeat was kind of built around that, which means in the next couple of weeks we should get that Indie World showcase because they usually do one around mid-April, late March, mid-April. So somewhere in that window we should get it. And then after that, Switch Sports, and then we kind of get going again. So we should hopefully get some cool stuff next episode to talk about. And I'm sure we'll have some games we'll be playing as well. But I guess the only way to really find out what and where and when we're going to get those things is to just tune in. So we'll be back on April 24th, and you can see what we're talking about there. You can subscribe to us on all the podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, Spotify. We're on YouTube. RamNintendo.com is the name. You can follow us on Twitter at RamNintendo. Individually, we're on Twitter. I am JSR7. Angel is Wero, WEIRO_O. Kevin is KVN Gomi. And who knows, maybe we even finally get to that random Nintendo where we have a growing list of things we keep alluding to talking about that we need to talk about, namely Elden Ring. But yeah, I think that's about it. Kevin, do you have a final word or maybe multiple words?
I crap. I don't know. Put Wordle on Switch. There we go.
How would that work?
What do you mean how that would work?
How would that work? How would you?
What do you
have
mean
to
how would that work? It's lingo, right? It's just.
But how do you? Let's say you want to play it on the TV.
How do you put a web browser on Switch?
No. I'm saying like
bring
Wordle
an on-screen keyboard. What do you mean? How does that work?
Yeah, so you have to use a control stick and like move it around.
When has that ever stopped you putting it on your TV and creating a login information for a Nintendo ID?
But that's just
or
one. Or
choosing a password.
That's just one or two entry fields. This is 6 different words you have to keep adjusting. I don't know. It's so perfect for touch.
It's 30. It's 30 at most. Not 30. Even 30. It's 26.
No. 6 layers of words. So compound that. So 6 times 26 or whatever. Yeah. I'm just saying.
It's literally only 36. And chances are you're not even going to be. Well, I mean, depending on how terrible at Wordle you are.
I will say I usually land in 4 or 5 guesses. So I guess.
Did
it's
you
less
stop
than
recording, or am I just talking to the voice?
Oh, I'm still recording. I'm still going. Kevin. We gotta hash this out. But no, yes, more Wordle for the world. I agree with that in principle.
Yeah, just put Wordle on Switch. Put Quirrell on there while you're at it too.
And
all
Hurdle.
Right.
And Hurdle.
Hurdle's all right. All right.